What's the most embarrassing thing you did as a kid that you think about to this day? I'm 39 and I still think about my first almost kiss. It was so awkward and embarrassing. I was 11 or 12 and at camp. We were playing spin the bottle. I was a really naive little girl and didn't quite understand what I was getting myself into. The bottle landed on me and I stood up to kiss the older and far more experienced boy in front of me. I essentially unhinged my jaw and opened up my mouth really wide to kiss him. He stepped back and took one look at me and said no. When I was like 7 or 8 I was staying over at a friend's for a sleepover. Had to go to the bathroom late at night but it was down a super creepy dark corridor and was too spooked. Friend suggested I pee in one of his baby brother's diapers and I was so desperate that I did. His mom came in to find me holding a soaked diaper with piss all over the floor whilst he was laughing hysterically. 1/10 want to die every time it comes back to me. Which is at least twice a week. I liked this boy in my art class and found out through some mutual friends that he lived a few blocks from me. So instead of just talking to him at school like a sane person I decided I'd get his attention by sneaking out of my house at 4 AM with a big bag of garbage. Walking all the way to his house. Throwing the garbage all over his lawn. Then ringing his doorbell and running back home. The next day at school I asked him if anything weird happened at his house last night. When he said yeah I revealed that I was the one who pranked his family last night. He just awkwardly said oh okay. And didn't talk to me for a few months after that. What the duck was I thinking? I was at a sleepover in middle school. I had gotten new pajamas and everything. I was so excited because I really wanted to be friends with these girls. Woke up in the middle of the night. Only to find I had wet myself. I had to sneak into her sister's room where we put our bags to find a change of pants. All I had were jeans. When everyone woke up I told them I got cold. My mom told me I smelled when I got in the car to go home. I told her their beagle smelled bad and slept with me all night. Edit. Thanks for all the replies. It's nice to know we are all just a bunch of bedwetters. I was in high school and asked a teacher if she was a member of the Mile High Club in front of the class. I had never flown before and was not aware that the Mile High Club was for people who had 6 in a plane. I was thinking about the memberships where you sit in private rooms to wait for your plane and get free things. Basically wanted to hill myself afterward. Yes, she was attractive. No, she did not answer. When I was a kid I used to watch TV with my parents. And I watched a couple French kiss. So I thought that was how you were supposed to kiss everyone. So later my mom asked for a kiss from me. And I tried to French kiss her. I sometimes think that I was a speckhead kid. I was in primary school, year 6 I believe, and I would have been about 11 at the time. One day the deputy principal was having an intense discussion in his classroom during lunch break. He seemed to be acting as a mediator to sort out a conflict between a group uncomfortable looking kids who were all standing around him. I happened to be using one of the computers in the room nearby and listening curiously as I overheard bits of whatever drama was unfolding between them. To this day I have no fucking idea what came over me. But for some reason I decided it was appropriate to walk over. Lean down and slam my palms on the teacher's desk like I owned the place. Say so. What's going on here? And look around at each of them expectantly like they were actually about to recount the story to me in its entirety. The deputy principal was this stern older guy who was not the type to be ducked with. He just looked at me with the most incredulous look on his face for a couple of seconds and blinked. Wah comma. None of your business. Everyone stared at me in silence for several seconds and I walked off sheepishly. I still have no idea what came over me that day. This was not normal behavior for me. I still cringe about it occasionally. In middle school we were doing presentations over basic stuff about different diseases. Just general stuff like symptoms. Who's most likely to get it? Etc. My group got diabetes. So we got to work figuring it out. We kinda just got the basic idea that you get diabetes from eating a bunch of sugar so it's only fat people who have it. I don't think I understood type 1 back then. I barely do now. So We thought it would be an absolute riot if we made fun of fat people with diabetes in our presentation. So with each of us having huge sheet-eating grins on our faces during our presentation, I hit the clicker to go to the next slide and it's just full of morbidly obese people. I'm like, and this is what a person with diabetes looks like. I was accepting a ducking roar of laughter, but everyone just sat there for what seemed like years. Our teacher didn't do anything. I think she was in shock. Then one girl just said, "That's not funny. My dad has diabetes." And we shut the presentation off and sat down. I wanted to duck and die. When I was around 5 or so, I used to go to the side of my house with a shovel to sheet. Now you might be thinking I dug a hole, a sheet in it. I wish. I would defecate onto the shovel and then fling it over the gate. Onto the street. I remember eventually getting caught and having a very awkward talk with my parents. When I was about 7 or 8. My dad had custody of me and my sister every other weekend. My mom would drop us off with him Fridays. And he'd always take us to this nice shopping area where we'd go buy some Babysitter's Club books and have dinner. We always parked in the same parking garage. And I always ran ahead 3 floors down the stairwell because I liked to hide underneath the stairs and jump out and yell boo when I would hear my dad and sister start coming down the last flight. Only one time I did it. And it wasn't my dad and my sister at all. It was an elderly couple who must have entered on a lower level ahead of my family. They had to be in their 70s. The woman gasped and clutched her chest and they almost fell down the stairs. I thought she was having a heart attack. I was mortified. I don't even really remember what I said to them. My dad apologized to them. And then he and my sister proceeded to make fun of me for years. That was almost 30 years ago now. And my face still gets all hot from even thinking about it. Edited to @ I am loving reading the responses here. Sounds like a lot of other kids have accidentally scared the elderly in a similar fashion. Thanks so much for helping me feel not so alone with my elder scaring shame. My mom took my brother and I to the circus when I was about 5 or 6. We got slushy drinks during the circus that were pretty frozen. Trying to break up a big piece of ice, I jammed the straw to the bottom of the styrofoam cup, putting a hole in the bottom and getting cherry slushy all over me. I started to cry when everybody was quiet watching the tightrope walker do his thing. Here I am screaming, covered in red stuff, and a spotlight shines on me. A lot of people gasped, thinking something really bad was happening. They stopped the show for a few minutes. The only thing more red than my shirt was my mom's face. I still think about that from time to time. And call my mom to apologize sometimes when I'm drunk. I was sleeping over at a friend's house and got my period early and woke up and there was a bit of blood on the sheets, so when she went to take a shower I pulled off the fitted sheet and turned it around and put it on so it was on her side so she'd think it was her. We slept in same bed together. IDK, why I didn't just tell her the truth and clean it off. Went on my first date at around 13 to Finding Nemo with a girl and her friend when it first came out in theaters. Ate a bunch of popcorn with a huge soda and ended up sitting through the last 30 minutes of the movie having to pee so bad. Being an awkward early teen, I didn't want to get up and awkwardly crawl through the packed movie theater, so just endured the pain. Afterwards, I ran to the packed bathroom and waited in line behind a ton of other men awkwardly for a urinal. Finally, one opened up in my line and I rushed up to it only to realize that the base of it was at my crotch level. So I basically had to pee upwards to get it in the urinal. I had to pee so bad and felt so awkward about the whole situation that I started peeing but didn't want to be even more weird and looked down at where I was peeing in front of all the other men waiting to piss. So I just kinda stood on my tiptoes and stared at the wall. Initially getting it in the bowl but then becoming unaware of where my pee was going, I ended up spraying the front of the urinal. Getting my entire lower front covered in piss bouncing off the contaminated urinal. And soaking the floor and probably the guy's feet next to me. Upon finishing my giant pee, I realized the sheet I was in as I had to meet my date and her friend outside the bathroom along with walk past the line of guys waiting to use the urinal behind me. I ended up rapidly pretending to spray myself with water at the sink and then walked out with my sweatshirt on. but with my hands in the front pockets stretching it down, trying to cover up my crotch and upper thighs. I rapidly said bye without a hug and hopped in the front seat of my mom's minivan and rode home smelling like pee. It was awkward. When I was about 5 years old, I shat in the ocean on a crowded beach and watched in horror as the turd floated and then washed ashore, gently rolling in and out with the waves. Just rolling. 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 My signature look as a teen was black chunky boots, black pants, black tank top, a black hoodie. Those arm things from Hot Topic, black. Of course, with a wallet chain, fedora, and a face design that I drew in black eyeliner, usually going from the corner of my left eye to the middle of my cheek. I dressed like a nice guy, TM, as a 13-year-old girl. My 5th grade teacher randomly asked if anyone in class had eaten buffalo meat before. I blindly said I had buffalo wings the other night. Felt so dumb when everyone started laughing. I didn't know what the word big dig meant. So when two kids on the bus said, "I heard you have a big dick," I tried to act cool and responded, "Well, guess what, I don't have one." That was the day I learned to never act like you know something if you don't know what it is. So, I grew up in Indonesia where people middle class and above typically had maids, so I grew up assuming everyone had maids. Moved to Singapore where it's more of an upper middle class and above thing. Thought a great rallying cry to unite people against crappy cafeteria food was, even my maids eat better than this. Weatherman visited my school and my class was on TV. Of course, the one time they show me on camera I'm mining my nose for green gold. Watching a Bill Nye video in 4th grade. I was in the last row of desks. And I had an absolutely horrifying cough sneeze fart combo that felt like my entire body was exploding. It sounded like a demented goose attacking a dog on top of a whoopee cushion. Everyone turned and stared and started laughing, and I put my head down and pretended to be dead. I pissed myself in primary school in year 5, UK. I was so shy I didn't want to put my hand up and ask to go to the toilet, so I tried to hold it in until home time, which was only a few minutes away, but to no avail. Once the floodgates were open and there was no going back, I decided that the best course of action would be to look as nonchalant as possible. And just maybe, no one would notice. So I stood there, silently gazing out of the window and pissing myself, trying to appear as though I didn't have a care in the world. Obvs, that was a sheet plan of action, and of course everyone ducking noticed. Just when I thought I'd reached the climax of mortification, however, when the whole class was watching me piss myself in stunned silence, the very sweet teacher said Bonnie, and my ducking mouth decided to blurt out, "I'm being sick." The teacher muttered, "You're being sick," and I responded defiantly, with piss streaming very obviously down my legs and all over my white, or yellow, socks and into my shoes. "Yes. It's not we. I'm being sick. Good times." When I was about 8 years old, we took a field trip to the Field Museum here in Chicago. We had a lunch break and I wandered off to the gift shop to see what they had. I had a huge crush on this girl named Victoria in my class, and I saw this ladybug ring for a couple of dollars. I knew she liked ladybugs and I had money my parents gave me to buy something at the shop. So I decided to buy the ring and give it to her. I was really nervous and kept waiting for the right time to do it. I eventually decided to just go for it and walked up to her near the end of the trip. She was with some of her friends, which made me more nervous, but I found the courage to do it. She looked at the ring and laughed. Her friends joined her and she then tossed the ring in the trash. I was completely devastated and tried hard to hold back my tears. Even though I'm over it now, that completely ducked my confidence with girls for a long time. Looking back, I may have embarrassed her to giving it to her in front of her friends, which is why she reacted that way. But whatever the case, it's probably the most embarrassed I have been in my life. I had an older cousin who I overheard say she was going to be a porn star one day. I had no idea what that was, 9 years old. One day we went to the mall with her parents and a kiosk was selling license plate holders. One said "#1 porn star." I very loudly said, "Look Angie. Number 1 porn star. For you." The look on her parents' face. I told this story years ago on Reddit and got the tag Santa molester. But one Christmas when I was about 5-6ish years old, I was in line at the mall to sit on Santa's lap. I decided that I wanted to give him money to go towards feeding the reindeer. And since I was 5-6, that money was basically a handful of nickels and dimes and probably a couple pennies. Not much, maybe like 40 to 50 cents and change. My turn came up and I sat on Santa's lap. And I tried to hand him the money, but it fell out of my hand and right down onto Santa's crotch. I dove right in there trying to pick up the money with my little boy hands, and Santa hastily said, very hastily, "Oh. Ho. It's okay. I'll get it later." And put my on the ground to send me on my way. So, yeah, I abuse Santa Claus. And indeed, it still haunts me to this day. I bothered a girl for 3 years straight with my love, including following her to classes, trying love letters, poems in front of her FRNDS, essays. The most cringy was I befriended a guy in her apartment just to celebrate the festival with her. We went together to ask her for joining us. She instantly shut the door on my face. We're good friends now. Although something good came out of that. My older, 6-year-old friend told me, 5-year-old, that if I ate soap, it would make me magic. I took a big huge bite of that ivory bar. Stuck a button up my nose when I was 4-6. Can't quite remember. Didn't tell my mom about it at all. Later that night I ended up in the ER to get it removed because it got lodged pretty far up there and it really hurt, so I woke my mom up crying. I did a bunch of dumb stuff as a kid, but this is the one I hate remembering the most. Whenever I had to go to the washroom, I would pull my pants down to my ankles and waddle my way to the washroom, never in public. Only when I was in the comfort of my own home. I got diarrhea really bad when I was a kid. Thought it was over, so I went to my best friend's house. We were playing with Legos when I hit me. Sweat dripped from my brows. My hands felt far away and very cold. And in my stomach there was a weight, like that of an enormous anchor pulling what felt like a bowling ball. I started running. I burst through the bathroom door and all hell broke loose. An unholy torrent of sheet burst out of my body, not unlike a year-old lasagna being fired from an air cannon. By some miracle my boxers managed mostly to contain this monstrosity. I knew they were too far gone. I had only moments before the acidity had started to leer through the cotton. I panicked. I tried to flush them. They went down after about 10 attempts. I tried to wipe my legs and lower back and pants clean, hoping that by some miracle they wouldn't notice. They did. I lied that I just needed pants, but my underwear were fine. I don't get the logic either, but I was 8, sure me. My friend's dad gave me sweet pants to wear and took us bowling. A few days later my parents got a phone call. I'd clogged the toilet with my underwear. They had to get the pipes replaced. That meant cutting out a section of the wall. I had to write them an apology letter, and I didn't get Christmas because my parents were paying to fix my damage. And that is my worst embarrassment. My mom and dad had a lot of pet names for each other: Honey, Pumpkin, Lovey, etc., and I loved to play dress up pretending to be my mom and imitate the things she said. One night, when they thought I was sleeping, I overheard my parents arguing and she called him a rat bastard. Never having heard this, I thought it was a made-up love word like bookie. My dad comes to pick me up from daycare maybe a week later. I'm playing house. He comes in and still playing a mom. I scream for all my classmates and their parents to hear. How was your day? Rat bastard? TL. Doctor called my father a rat bastard in front of all the parents at Christian daycare pickup. Edit. Thank you so much for the gold. Rat bastard. Growing up, my parents really wanted to make sure I wouldn't smoke. Most of my grandparents passed from smoking related illnesses, so this is understandable. Except they drilled it in my head a little too hard. One day in kindergarten a classmate was absent. The next day she was there. and she was super sad. We asked her what happened, and she said that her grandma died of lung cancer. I told her it served her right. The teacher was not pleased. I apologized the next day as well as a 5-year-old could. But damn if that hasn't stuck with me since. I'd like to think my empathy skills have improved over the years. Glad to see this has sparked some polite discourse in the replies. And thanks for the gold. Happy to see my social misadventures bring you joy. When I was in kindergarten waiting outside to be picked up by my mom, I saw her approaching. I closed my eyes and ran at her and hugged her. Opened my eyes and I had not aimed correctly as I was hugging the wrong woman. One of my classmates yelled at me to stop hugging their mom. I still think about it. In elementary school I used to pick my nose, drop my pencil by accident, then wipe my boogers into the carpet when my hand was already down there to pick up my pencil. 2 problems with my foolproof plan. 1. I wasn't discreet at all with the actual nasal excavation. 2. I did this sheet like every 5 minutes. Edit. The elusive carpeted classroom was in Utah, USA. Why is this so ducking exotic to y'all? I went to a girl's house to ask her out. Her mom said she was sick and she later tweeted a guy came to my house to ask me out and my mom had to cover for me, still hurts to think about. Edit. Her mom's face when I told her I was there to ask out her daughter still makes me physically ill when I think about it. Shat my pants in the 1st grade while playing Monopoly on the last day of school before summer break. My teacher kept telling me to hold on when I tried to ask. Long story short, while we were all on the floor playing Monopoly I shat a sheet so bad it lifted me 2 inches off the ground. It was so bad I got sent home for the day. I still think about it cause I'm unsure if I couldn't hold it in any longer or if I did it to spite my teacher. Either way it was super embarrassing. In 4th grade my mom took me back to the school after hours because she had some PTO meeting or something of the sort. With my boredom peaking, a brilliant idea popped into my head. I claimed that I needed to get something out of my desk in my classroom and was allowed to go grab it, which gave me a few seconds in the classroom all by myself. When I got into the room, I immediately grabbed a piece of paper and wrote "I love you Kelsey" and placed it in Kelsey's desk, the girl I'd had a crush on and had never spoken to, and left. Next day, I get into the classroom and everyone is surrounding Kelsey's desk. They are trying to figure out who wrote the letter, so naturally I play along and try to decipher the handwriting to figure out this mystery crush who couldn't even spell her name right. Worst, or best, part was that my teacher knew that I was in the room by myself the day before. She never gave me up, but I know she knew. My cleaning daycare lady got me a sweater on my 12th birthday and all I said was, "Is that all?" She got a bit sad and said that it is all she could get me. She died of cancer when I was 15 and I didn't get a chance to say how sorry I am because I wasn't mature enough. I hope it wasn't such a big deal for her as it later became for me. I was a spoiled brat and couldn't appreciate a gift she wasn't obliged to spend her money on. It is the thing that embarrasses me the most to this day because that is where I failed myself. I behaved like a brick and not a human being. Since then I am trying my best to appreciate every little thing someone does for me regardless of how big or small it is. Let this be my way to say I'm sorry. I asked a girl out in the hall after class one day. Some girl that I had never even talked to before, and I gave her my number on a piece of paper and said to call me in this weird awkward manner. Then I walked to my car, it was last class of 10th grade, and looked in the rearview mirror and noticed I had a giant booger hanging like an inch out of my nose. She never called.